I'm Dana Denha, and you're watching FYI. If you live in, visit, or even drive by the Bryant community, you may have noticed there's some big changes on the horizon. This neighborhood is being used as a pilot program to implement some of the city's larger sustainability goals. Watch as city officials and community members gather to learn about the new greener methods to heat and cool this area of Ann Arbor and plans to incorporate these sustainability initiatives throughout the city.
It's just a neighborhood that really has residents that care about each other. And the reality is for this work, our hope is to be able to do it in more communities throughout Ann Arbor. And certainly other organizations are seeing the work that we're doing, that what seemed completely unachievable 4 years ago is absolutely going to happen.
This geothermal project is within the context of a much broader initiative in Ann Arbor to support everyone that lives here in having a safer, more comfortable, and more energy efficient home.
You've seen some improvements already with respect to 820 in your neighborhood. You've seen new roofs, new appliances, home insulation, weatherization, and so forth. And these are just some of the things that we're working on to make sure that Bryant is a place that is renowned in the city.
We want you to love this neighborhood. We want your neighbors to be able to stay. No one should have to leave because they can't afford their bills. That's what we're trying to solve for, and the way we've designed this project with the geothermal system and the solar and the energy efficiency, we think we can cut bills by more than 50%, gas possibly up to 80%.
Stay tuned, and we'll be back with more in exactly 30 seconds. During the Holocaust, families were torn apart and innocence was lost as European Jews were slaughtered for their beliefs. From 1933 to 1945, during World War II, Nazi Germany killed 2 out of 3 European Jews, but one survivor. Ben Lesser used this brutal time in his history to make a positive impact on numerous lives through education, tolerance, and to never forget, in order to shape a future where Jews can live without fear and persecution. Joining me is Robyn Weber, Director of Marketing, and Gail Lesser-Gerber, Director of the Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation. Welcome to the show.
But thank you for having us. This is a true honor.
You know, you guys obviously were very close to Ben, your family. Can you tell me a little bit about him, growing up with him, and why it's so important to you now, in his recent passing, to keep that memory alive for the nation, for the world?
Yes, now it's more important than ever. I am Ben's daughter, Gail, and I grew up with being a daughter of a Holocaust survivor. It didn't mean much to me as a child. I actually did not even know my father's story until I was an adult. And he didn't want to share it with us. At all of our family gatherings, we had our grandparents that lived across the street, and we learned their story on my mom's side, from the pogrom in Russia and coming to America. We knew their side. My father never shared. It wasn't until really one day that my son's teacher found out that my father was a Holocaust survivor and wanted to know if he would come to the class and speak. Well, my father was very nervous. He said no at first. Nobody needs to hear about these horrors. But but we convinced him, and he went and started to speak. Now, this was in the late 80s. So people in the survivors in those days are really not starting to speak about it. They were just starting to talk about it because we also had Schindler's List coming out, and people started talking about the history of the Holocaust a little bit more. More museums were opening. And so he felt that maybe it's time to tell his story. And he did. He stayed in the classroom. He was supposed to speak for like 45 minutes. It ended up turning to an hour and a half. The kids didn't want to leave for lunch. And what um, what went through him was really a feeling like this is really important and they do need to hear this. They're really interested. These fifth graders sat there with their mouths open and didn't want to leave. Uh, so that's when Ben really realized it was time to speak up. The Shoah Foundation does that's the Steven Spielberg Foundation through USC. And they were doing interviews at the time to interview Holocaust survivors around the world. And Ben, um, and Ben was one of those survivors. Once he started telling his story all the way through from beginning to end, at that time, Ben realized that, maybe I'll write a book. So he started to write a memoir. And almost all the way through the book, he was almost finished with it. And he actually tore it up and he said, no, it has to be more than a memoir. It has to be more of an educational book. And and so he rewrote it, and it's based on history during that time, not just his story. It was one survivor story that needed a place in this world to live on to educate students. And that's what and then we, as a family, we founded the Zachor Foundation, and and the website is just growing from there. We are educating students around the world and teachers.
That's amazing. It's interesting to think that he held that story in for so long and that it took his grandson to bring, because you're like, you know what, I'll do it for my grandkid. You have those feelings. You're
Yeah,
like, I'll do it for that person. And it really probably was healing for him in the end to actually start that conversation. He was probably holding a lot of things in for many years.
he was. It became a domino effect because all he was to think about for so many years is sharing his story, the horrors, the horrors, the horrors. And the more he started sharing his story, he realized it's not about the horrors. So, yes, this is what he went through in the concentration camps, on the death march, in the death train. But there were also miracles that took place. There was family that they tried to hold on to each other for as long as they could, even coming back together. It's a whole cycle of life and endurance and strength and
Resiliency.
being resilient. And uh, it's it really changed his life. And the more he spoke, the more he remembered certain stories, and the more he remembered, the tender moments with his parents and his siblings. So it wasn't all just the horrors in his head. He started really remembering a wonderful childhood he was having, and then everything changed one day. One day,
Yeah, it's nice to think that there was a beautiful life before that
yeah.
happened.
They were a very tight family. They were also Orthodox Jews. And, just like so many, families that have religion in their life, they're much tighter as a family, and they talk more and they learn more, and they read together, and they had a beautiful life together. It was also a hard life. During the summers they lived in Hungary, that they'd be in the grandparents' houses in Hungary, and during the winters they'd be in Krakow, and that's where everybody had their schooling, and that's where my grandfather's businesses were, or his parents' businesses were. And so it was a different time, but it was a lovely family time.
Can you talk about, obviously, Ben's passing was recent, but there's significance to the date that he passed on. And I'd like to know a little bit more about that, what that means passing. Well, it was the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Is that?
It's symbolic for those who pass away on a high holiday. And in this case, it was Rosh Hashanah, September 23rd, 2025. And they call those who pass away on a symbolic holiday, specifically on Rosh Hashanah, a tzaddik, which is kind of like this
Chosen one.
chosen one.
Yeah.
You know, God chose him at that moment to be with him. It was
It's
God knew
hard,
the day.
I guess he has plans for him, you know. Um,
Very
yeah,
fitting
it's
for our grandfather, actually.
That's
yeah.
so like it brings a tear to my eye to think about how he did so much in this life. He was obviously needed here, and he did so much here. But
Mhm.
then he proved it. He proved it. And then he was taken in a way that was beautiful for him, a way that he deserved.
Yeah. It's interesting also. I always played around with this. We never discussed it, but my father was born on October 18th. 18 in the Jewish religion has the numbers have symbolic meanings to them. 18 means life. Like they say, the song L'chaim, Chai is 18, and that's to life. And so there's a lot of symbolism that I think followed my dad, and he felt that he was saved to tell his story. It wasn't until really Schindler's List started coming out, and knowing about the filming of that and the Shoah Foundation, that his story needs to be told, just as everybody's story needs to be told. But this is one man that decided to really make a difference out there. We're not part of a large organization. We speak to, Ben always spoke to large organizations and museums around the world and such, and memorials. But this was his way of being able to uh, leave something for future generations. We now have computers, and our Zachor Foundation is an educational tool. You could take it with you. A student could go onto it, and that's what he wanted. After he's gone, he wanted to make sure that his story will continue on for generations.
Yeah, and it's not just about his story. It's about creating other people's stories and letting other Jewish people thrive in the years and years to come. Because we all know that, and it's a terrible thing, that Jewish people get a lot of hate, and most recently they have too. So it's nice
Oh,
to talk about all these positive things that the Jewish community brings to each other and to everybody.
thank you. Yes, that's so true. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, Robyn, but
Well, I think the biggest thing is that we didn't touch upon this in the very beginning, but Zahor means remember
Hmm.
in Hebrew. And it is my grandfather's legacy for Zahor to be recognized as an international symbol of remembrance, not just to never forget, but specifically about never again.
Hmm.
And that's, it's kind of like we have a pin that he created. He's the sole manufacturer, where our organization is the sole manufacturer and distributor of the Zahor pin, supplied to many of the museums worldwide and to those who just want to wear it. And it's just like a little symbol. It's a promise, right? To never
Hmm.
again. Never forget. And I
and we
promise
have
to do good in
people.
this world. Choose love, not hate. And that's the biggest thing with him is that it wasn't so much when he would go on his speaking engagements, it wasn't so much about talking, as my aunt had mentioned, about the horrors of the Holocaust, which he did a little bit, because it's the truth and he's an eyewitness. But it was about the resilience. It was about teaching tolerance, about not hating and how to move forward. because we have to in this world, especially with what's happening in today's climate.
And acceptance.
Yeah. Yes. Everything you're saying, I mean, what wonderful things, what a wonderful way to look at life and live life. I can completely relate to it. I can't stand when people are like negative or, even just why would you hate on someone because of their religious beliefs? Why?
That's
What
right.
what does it change for you? Why
Or
would you
political.
hold on to that anger about someone else's beliefs?
Mhm.
It's important. Ben used to say that, well, first of all, if we all had the same belief, we'd be a bunch of like a bunch of little ants just following, and it would be a boring world.
Yeah.
But it is our differences that, we should be learning from each other. We should be accepting. Acceptance is a very big word. Um, we should be, we should love our neighbor. There's reasons for, you know, certain things. It's okay if you don't agree with them and you have different beliefs. Listen, no matter who your God is or what who you pray to, no matter what, we're all flesh and bone and heart, and we all love our children. We all love our family. We get cut. We all bleed the same way, um, and we all want the same things
Yeah, my grandfather
for our
used to
family.
say, um, we are all part of the human race, and we should all appreciate our differences, and that's what makes us beautiful.
Yeah. And he makes sure Ben went into classrooms really throughout the United States and in Europe, and um, really, whether it was in person or in Zoom, he would end his speaking events with actually having the students hold hands, and they'd say it like three times, never
I love
again, never again, never again. And of course, the students at first, were, and then COVID came out, so they couldn't do that anymore. But they would hold hands and be a little shy to begin with.
But by the third
And
time, they felt
we
it.
had tears. Everybody had tears. And he tells students to go home, go sit down at a table tonight, have dinner around the table with your full family or, your guardians, or just sit down and tell them what you saw today, who you heard today. Tell them the story. That's one of the things we're missing in this world today. Everybody's like this on their computers or playing games and eating in front of the TV. I grew up in a different era where my grandparents lived across the street. And TV was just coming out in those days, and we sat around, the table, and we got to know our cousins and our aunts and uncles, and we got to find out about, the history, and finding out or talking to a grandparent or a cousin or an aunt to find out their history and which is your history, to find that out and to have that absorb into the heart, that creates, empathy. And that's one of the things that this world doesn't have too much of anymore. Everybody is doing their own thing. Um, you know, People are not empathetic to other people. They're not curious about the other stories. And we need to create that again. We need to get away from the computers at least once a week, sit down with your family and talk, invite people over.
And if you wait to have these conversations, these sit down dinners where you talk to your aunts and uncles and stuff, it might be too late if you don't do it now. You
Mhm.
talk to people that have lost their parents or whoever it might be, and they're like, I don't know what my mom's favorite movie was or like what her favorite food
Yeah,
was because I never really sat down and just had those conversations. And those things might seem mundane, but they're not. There's something that you'll remember and hold on to forever. You're going to be like, my mom's favorite color is green. I know that. You know what I mean? Like, these things and you
yeah.
want to know them and you don't want
And
to take that
almost
time and not learn them.
and almost any time you come across something green, it touches you in your heart because you're thinking of,
Yes.
it brings your mom to mind. So true, so true.
I mean, the way you both talk about Ben, I wish I could have known him in this life because all these words you're saying about empathy and love, this is all resonates so much in my own personal life. That's how I'm like the most, I could cry talking to you guys right now because I really feel bad that you lost such a beautiful human being. But
Oh,
I just like everything he's saying just makes so much sense to me. And I love that idea of just spreading that love and sharing these beautiful stories and your history. And it doesn't have to be the worst parts of your history. Like I said, it can be mundane. It doesn't have to be
mhm.
some exciting thing that happened to you. It can be the little things.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, my father, one of one of the things that my father, when he would talk about it, and here he is talking about his horrors of, hiding behind in between buildings from the Nazis, and fleeing a city and being going out in the dark, and uh, but then he tells a little story about this house that they went to, and a and they lived on one end in one room, and the owner of the orchard lived with his family in the other side. And tells about the story. Him and his little brother were playing in the backyard and digging around, and they found some gold teeth just from digging around. Well, my grandfather went into the city with those gold teeth one day in hiding, because you really would, you could be out during certain hours, but you had to have a purpose, and you couldn't work in those days, so you weren't going to work. But he went to like a dealer, and he sold the gold teeth, and he came back with a bicycle that the boys shared. And that story of my father getting a bike for that short time that they were at that house, living there and hiding, he they had joy, and he was only able to ride it around in the backyard or in the orchard area, so nobody else could see them. But that little story, that little bit of joy as a young boy, being able at I think he was 12 years old at the time, and his brother was about 8. Um, Gave him such joy. And when he would mention it, you saw his whole face light up, and he became a child again in the way he was telling it.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the Zachor Foundation and what you do for the Jewish community and maybe ways we can help support it?
Robyn, do you want to cover this?
We are a nonprofit organization, small yet mighty, and it's all centered with the little Zahor pin, which means remember. And as we discussed, even though my grandfather's not here physically telling his story, um, his legacy to educate others about his life and what he went through about genocide, because it's not just about him, but it's also about teaching tolerance. And that's the biggest takeaway. So it started off with him speaking since 2000. Well, he's been speaking way longer than that, but Zahor's founded in 2009. And he's just been, it went from speaking engagements to books to creating an online curriculum. People wanted more. It wasn't just, they wanted so much more of Ben, so much more of what he can teach, so much more of the values that he offers. Um, so we created an online curriculum, and it's used worldwide today. It's not just the zahorfoundation.org. That's just the generic website in which we host information about him and about what he's been through and what the organization does and how you can be a part of it. But we also have the zahorlearn.org, ZHC is what we call it. And it is the first ever online teaching tool taught by a survivor
Curriculum.
curriculum, and it is free. And it is free to all teachers, to students, to history enthusiasts. It is an interesting, interactive um, tool where it's more see and say. So it's not just a written, it also has videos, photographs, glossary. It is full on teaching tool. And this is what a lot of teachers worldwide use for their students because let's face it, history is huge these days. World War II is pretty large, and the Holocaust A lot of teachers don't have time to teach it, or they just don't have the time to gather the materials. So we were approached by many teachers because we speak to so many places, and we created this curriculum for them. And it's actually many teachers actually help us create this curriculum. So we're constantly
And,
teaching.
and our curriculum is approved by organizations as, it's accredited. And we also have a section on there with a AI. It's called it's our AI in a story file. And years ago we had Ben do the AI. I don't know if you've seen organizations or some museums, they have it. And the only way to really do it is from a museum or something like that,
Mhm.
where Ben is sitting there and you could ask him hundreds of questions and he'll be able to answer them. So make sure to come when you come to our website, come visit our AI story file.
It's
And
actually a really cool process feature. It's a lifelike, I don't want to say holographic, but basically, it took many days, uh, 30 cameras, thousands of questions, and he is surrounded by green screen. And he's just sitting there, and you can literally ask him on the computer, on your iPhone, iPad, whatever technology you can use that you want to use. And like my aunt said, you can also go to museums as well, where they would see this lifelike Ben, but probably even bigger, right? And they would just ask him a question. Ben, what is your favorite color? And he'll answer. Ben, tell us what you were like when you were a child before the Holocaust. And he will talk about it. It is
it's a fantastic
It is
interactive
incredible.
tool.
It's an incredible feature. So, what teachers usually do is they will have the kids read the book, they will have the kids go online, go through the lesson planning, because it talks about next stages. It talks about what happens after the Holocaust
Mhm.
and what is it for you as a citizen? Like, what is your job moving forward, right? After you learn this.
Mhm.
Um, and then they will have it on screen. All the kids will ask questions with the AI feature. It is a pretty cool feature, and it's something that we own. So not very many people have it, um, and we are the ones that do.
That's so cool. He'll live on forever. People will be able to talk
Forever,
to him forever.
forever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then you could just get that on right from our website directly. It's our AI story file.
Well,
And
we're out of
ask
time,
him some
but
questions.
I will. I'm going to go on there and ask him some questions later today.
That's
And bring my daughter so she can learn a little bit more about it. Because, like you said, they're not always learning this information in school. But we are out of time. I loved the conversation. If you guys ever want to come back and talk about it again or more, I'd be happy to
well,
host you.
that would be wonderful. And we are building since Ben's passing. He physically is not in the classrooms or doing one-on-ones with the Zoom, but Robin is and I am, and we have appointments this week, next week, for the next couple months. Um, going to be in classrooms. So if you're a teacher or a student that's doing a report, just contact us. We're easy to get in touch with.
His legacy lives on.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much. It was a wonderful conversation. And you
it
guys have
was
a great
wonderful
day.
meeting you.
Pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. You too. Bye
For
bye.
more on this and other programs, visit a2gov.org/CTN. Visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to see all that we have to offer. And remember to like, subscribe, and ring that notification. Thanks for watching and tune in next time to FYI.